Hi, my name's Ian. I'm a dad. I'm an engineer. I've done some business, and I make videos about this chemical. It's nitrogen and hydrogen. You can make it with green electricity, and it's a pretty good green fuel. It's called green ammonia. Now, I have seen some people comment that ammonia is super dangerous. And I want to help sort of frame that and maybe dispel some myths because I don't actually think they know what they're talking about. I heard a guy say that ammonia was way too dangerous to use as a fuel to run mine trucks. Okay, too dangerous for mining. Mines that use dynamite and cyanide. Ammonia was too dangerous. uh, Let me show you why that's just not the case. But first, let's start with why this is a green fuel. All right. So you use green electricity and water electrolysis to make hydrogen. Right. But then immediately you take that hydrogen and you combine it with nitrogen, which you get from the air. The air is 78% nitrogen to make ammonia. Now, why do you do that? It's economics. It's economics, it's physics, it's supply chains. Ammonia is a liquid under just a little bit of pressure, right? And it doesn't take very much energy to turn hydrogen into ammonia. So when you turn it into ammonia, you preserve a whole lot of that green power, and you preserve it in a format that's easy to move around. Hydrogen, it's a gas. Gases don't have a lot of energy density. So the only way to really move it around is to compress it a lot, which takes a lot of energy, right? So, and then you end up with a compressed gas, or you use a lot of energy to turn it into a super cooled liquid. So this ammonia liquid versus high pressure gas, it has six and a half times the energy per liter, right? More energy in a tank than compressed hydrogen. It's just a better way to capture that green electricity, capture, move it, handle it, consume it. You might ask, I'm not going to show it here. What about batteries? It's 12 times more energy per liter than a battery, right? So it's fuels make sense. Now, green ammonia, are there unknowns? What do we know about this? How did what's the track record? You might not see it in your daily life, but we use a lot of ammonia. Outside of petroleum products, it's the most traded product in the world. We use 100 million barrels of oil a day. We use 5 million barrels of ammonia. So no, there aren't unknowns. We know everything about this: safety standards, training, emergency response. We know everything. Okay. Now, so the green ammonia landscape is slightly different than the ammonia landscape. We used to make ammonia with natural gas, but it's actually already very, very mature because green power, we know everything about. Hydrogen production at scale, we know everything about. Taking that hydrogen, turning it into ammonia, we've been doing it for 100 years. The distribution, done. The ammonia storage, done. The only real difference is instead of using ammonia for agriculture or industry, we're going to use it as a fuel. That's the only difference. Everything else is done, right? It's all baked. We're ready to go. So what's the difference? What's the added risk? All right, let's use a mine truck, for example. In agriculture, what they do is they take a giant tank of ammonia They hook it up with some nozzles and they shoot it into the ground as a direct fertilizer. Giant volume, rubber hoses, guy in the cab. Okay. So in a mine truck, how is this more dangerous? You know, same supply chain to get the tank there. It's a smaller tank. The actual amount that's out of the tank is it's a smaller line. That fuel line will be smaller. There's emergency shut-off valves, everything, right? So even though we're using it as a fuel, there's no new risk. Okay, it's same. So let me take you through the risks that we understand already very, very well. So let's break these down into three things. First is mechanical. So something with a high pressure, if it broke or leaked or something, it could, you know, shoot out and mechanically hurt you. Fire and explosive, a different type of risk. This is flammable. Obviously, it's a fuel. And the last one is toxic. People will say it's toxic. What does that mean, and how do we understand that? Pressure. First, I would say this is a low risk. It's very similar to propane. It's a pressurized liquid. So as it gets warmer out, the pressure in the tank goes up, but it never actually gets that high. At 500 degrees, it's 200 psi. And in like an emergency case, you would sorry, that was a phone call. In an emergency, like if a car was burning, if a mine truck was burning, you would have a pressure release valve that would minimize it before the pressure vessel blew up. And that release, there's ways to do that safely. You can do it where you basically move enough air through where the concentration of what you're releasing isn't high. So basically, this is low. All right. Now, pressure is a big deal. 20 people a year die in the US because of high pressure, 6,000 injuries. But we're not talking propane, we're not talking ammonia, we're not talking 200 psi. Argon that you would use in welding is 2,000 psi. Oxygen tanks at a hospital, or somebody with COPD, 2,200 psi. That's high pressure. 200 psi, not really. A pop bottle in the sun, bottle of Coke, is probably 120 psi. Right? Let's just put some context around this. So explosion and fire, right? There's a couple things that sort of matter here. How much fuel you need to possibly have an explosion, and then that range. The air fuel mix range, is it very wide or very narrow? That factors into the risk of explosion. So does the flame propagation speed, so how fast will a flame move? So is the ignition temp. And for ammonia, basically all of these, it's kind of hard to get it to catch on fire. So if we looked at this, ammonia, you need at least 15% air fuel mix, 15% for it to ever blow up. That's way higher than everything else, way higher than butane. Carbon monoxide, I wonder if I didn't realize this, that car exhaust can blow up, right? At 12%. Dimethyl ether is a synthetic diesel, 3%, gasoline 1.2, hydrogen. Hydrogen, not only do you not need that much, 4%, but it's also explosive up to 75%. Basically, any hydrogen leak is insanely dangerous from an explosive perspective. Methane, 5 to 17, propane 2. So ammonia, relative to other things, very, very low risk of fire. If you Google it, you might come across some ammonia explosions. Those are ammonia nitrate, which is a different thing. That's fertilizer. It's not the liquid we're talking about. It's a solid. In fact, that's what you use in mining for explosives. So the last one, last category, toxic risk. First of all, red flag, toxic isn't the right term. What we should be talking about is toxicity, right? So toxicity is it's the degree to which a chemical substance can cause damage. It's dose dependent, right? If you drink too much water, you will hurt yourself. But that's a lot of water. We don't go around saying water is toxic, but technically it is. So let's talk about ammonia. First of all, the types of ways it could hurt you, and then we'll talk about the dosage. So first of all, a little bit does not hurt you. It's in the water, it's in the food, it's all around us, it's naturally occurring. So ammonia itself is fine, and your body can break it down. Your liver naturally breaks it down. So we're talking about how much ammonia. Now, if you got on your skin, if you got on your eyes, it's strongly basic, and a base is basically the opposite of an acid. So it can burn you. Interestingly, it actually doesn't tend to burn you as much as it's also hydrophilic. And what that means is it has a very, very strong attraction to water. So it sucks water out of things. So like if you smell strong ammonia, cleaning ammonia, kind of bites at your nose, that bite is it pulling moisture out of your mucous membranes, right? Which gets to, some of the safety around it, how you recover from like an ammonia spill or something is water. You irrigate it, and that will suck it. It will dilute the ammonia out of you, right? Lastly, this one isn't exactly toxic, but it's related. Ammonia, if you had an accidental release, it's because it's a liquid that turns into a gas, as it changes state, it absorbs a lot of heat. So the ammonia gets really, really cold. So you can end up sort of with frostbite, right? So it's a base, it's hydrophilic, it evaporates, right? Now, one of the to counter that though, it's really, really smelly. It's smelly. You can smell it long before you're in any sort of concentration that can hurt you, right? So it has like this superpower where like it's got this big red warning flag, like there's a leak, stand off, don't come close, use protection, right? And that's very important, right? We're all about mitigating risk. So let's compare this to other things. Carbon dioxide, not that dangerous in a parts per million. You need a giant concentration to ever have any problem, right? Methane, natural gas, 1,000 parts per million. Gasoline, more like 300. 300, you're going to start hurting your liver. 300, you're going to start hurting your brain and losing cognitive function. Methanol, wood alcohol, right? It's not good for you. It's 200 parts per million. Carbon monoxide, exhaust, right? 50. Vinegar, chlorine, right? Like household things, 50. Chlorine, 1, right? I drink tap water. So it's not that there's chlorine in it, it's that the chlorine concentration isn't that high, right? And I'm not worried about being around, chlorine for a pool. I've added chlorine to a pool before. Like, so just because something's toxic, we really have to understand like the delivery mechanism, the concentration, etc. So ammonia, what the guidelines say is 35 parts per million. You could do that all day, every day. 500 parts per million, you probably shouldn't do for more than a half hour, an hour. right? But you can smell it at 5. At 35, it starts to be uncomfortable. At 100, it's really uncomfortable, right? So long before you get hurt, your body's saying, hey, let's go, right? And then it's lethal. Yeah, it's lethal at 40,000 parts per million. 40,000. Well, I mean, gasoline's going to blow up before then. Methanol's going to blow up. Carbon monoxide's going to blow up, right? So, and ozone, you'd be, sorry, not ozone, carbon monoxide, you'd also be, passed out and dead. So, yes, it's dangerous. And yes, if you say 35 parts per million, it sounds scary, right? But when you look at it compared to other things, it's similar to other fuels. It's similar, except because it smells so strong, you have this danger warning. So, in summary, uh, using ammonia as a fuel doesn't seem any more dangerous than how we already use ammonia. It's the same supply chain. The only difference is burning it in a vehicle, and your fuel line just isn't that big. I mean, and the tank you're using is much smaller than you'd be using in agriculture. So it's the new application doesn't seem dangerous. And then the various modes of failure, right? High pressure, well, it's not high pressure. Explosive, it's not really explosive. Toxic, yeah, it's toxic, but not proportionally really any more toxic than tons of stuff we use already. And there's a warning, the smell. So to me, green ammonia, it's green. It's green fuel. It's infinite. It's pretty cheap. And it seems safe. It seems scary, like the smell, if you don't know what it is, it's scary, but like break it down. It's safe. We use 5 million barrels a day. It's fine. There you go. Ian, I'm Ian. And yeah, let's run some mine trucks on this. All right. Cheers.